Hello, welcome to LTVs Top Props. I'm Carl Pimarini. Today we're going to talk about a film that has gone down into sci-fi history. In 1960, producer-director George Pal, who was famous as being one of the forefathers of science fiction film, bringing us films like Destination Moon, When Worlds Collide, and War of the Worlds. George decided to do something a little different. He contacted the H.G. Wells estate and got the rights to one of H.G. Wells' most famous books. In the process, little did he know, he was creating a legend in film history. The film he was talking about and that he was getting ready to produce is what we are going to focus on today, especially one of the iconic props from that film. Of course, what I'm talking about is this: the time machine.
It took the creative magic of George Pal and the fabulous production know-how of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer to catapult you through time into a world that is yet to be.
Why is it that we usually ignore the fourth dimension? You see, we can move in the other three. As the doctor said, up, down, forwards, backwards, sideways. But when it comes to time, we are prisoners.
Inventor Rod Taylor's breakthrough into the realm of the fourth dimension is defied by his friend Alan Young.
If that machine can do what you say it can, destroy it, George, before it destroys you.
Every moment is a year, hurtling through the atomic wars of the future on an incredible excursion into the unknown. Is this the human race of the future? Or is this the Morlocks, fiendish creatures who live in a weird underground world? And the Eloi, the tranquil sunshine people, who the Morlocks dominate and maintain like cattle, luring them below with the hypnotic wail of the sirens, to feed upon them in cannibalistic horror.
Okay, to get some background information on this iconic prop, I know a lot of the props we've talked about in this series, we call them iconic. This is one of the iconic props. But to talk about this, we're going to have a discussion with Mr. Don Coleman out in Burbank, California. Now, Don is the webmaster of one of the best websites regarding the 1960 George Pal film, The Time Machine. So we're going to Skype in and talk to Don Coleman, and he's pretty knowledgeable on the whole history and background of the 1960 George Pal film, and especially this prop here, which is a replica I built years ago, and we'll talk about that later on. But for now, let's talk to Don Coleman. Okay, today we are going to talk to a good friend of mine, Mr. Don Coleman out in Burbank, California. Don, how are you?
I'm doing great today, Carl.
Very good. Don and I have never met personally. We've talked to each other many times on the phone. Someday I plan to get out to Burbank, but haven't gotten there yet. So we'll get there. Anyway, Don, why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself, a quick little bio.
All right. I was born in Culver City, which is the heart of Screenland, which is when I was about 4 blocks from MGM Studios. So it was kind of my backyard when I grew up. On the way to junior high and high school, I had to walk right past Lot 2 every day. So that was really neat to peek in the gates and see what was going on inside there. And then I got hooked on TV shows and whatever, and I would see something on the movie or in a TV series that I wanted, and you couldn't go buy stuff like that in those days, so I learned how to make stuff. And George Pal's film, The Time Machine, really caught my attention as a kid when I first saw it. And just started building scratch models after that. But before that, I was doing model kits, do standard off-the-shelf stuff. So that's how I got started. And my dad was a carpenter, so we had a garage full of tools. I was probably working a radial arm saw by the time I was 8. So various jobs growing up, and then some friends of mine started their own, I guess it calls it a studio, the makeup company. And at one point, they asked me to come work for them, so I went over there and was doing props and stuff. From then on, that was around 86.
Okay, so you've been in the business for quite a few years, but what I want to do is kind of turn back the clocks again, back to 1960 or so. Did you, when was the first time you actually saw the Time Machine movie, the 1960 movie?
I saw it first run in August of 1960 when it hit Culver City. And I think it was a fluke because we were supposed to go to another theater to watch another movie my cousin was with, and she didn't want to go see that movie, so we went to see the Time Machine instead. So very lucky circumstances, I think.
What was it about that movie that kind of stayed with you all those years going forward?
I think the machine itself was really intriguing. We hadn't seen anything that looked like that ever before. And I think what really struck my mind was the fact that he supposedly built it in his own shop, in his garage, basically. And I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. So from that day on, I pretty much had in my mind how I was going to build one of these things. It's always been in my mind.
It's I don't know what it is about the design of that machine. It appeals to a lot of people. I mean, a lot of younger viewers may know it from The Big Bang Theory. It was on there, and a lot of people know that machine from that, unless you're older. And then you've seen reruns of the 1960 movie. Turner Classics plays it every once in a while.
Right.
So but many people, even younger people sometimes, are really attracted to the design of this machine. And I'm not sure, any inkling as to why that is?
I'm really not sure. I think it's possibly the way it's just presented in the movie, because the first time you see it, there's this huge musical lift, as it walks in the door, and the slow pan around it, and my wife says it's like George is making love to the machine when he walks up to it. He's caressing it, like it's his girlfriend or something. It's just, I think how it's presented really, influenced people. And like I said, too, it's so unusual looking. It's like, I know in the novel they talk about it being askew and various other descriptions, but this thing is really unusual how it all fits together. And you know that because you built one, too.
Right.
If one part isn't quite in the right place, other parts don't fit either.
Right.
And it's like, now what do we do? So.
Do you have any history as to the design of the actual 1960 George Pal directed the 1960 film, and the machine itself? Who designed the machine?
All I've really been able to find out so far is that the mentor Hubner was involved with it. He was an art designer at the time. William Ferrari had his hand into it, and I'm sure George Pal had the final okay on it, so I'm sure he had influence into it. Some years ago, there was a design that came up on auction, and it was attributed to Wah Chang. That was an early design of the machine. I had seen Wah prior to that, a couple months prior to this auction coming up, so I called him up. He was still alive at the time, and asked him about it, and he said he had absolutely nothing to do with the design of the machine. When they got involved with it, the design was already finalized, and they just had to build the model to pretty much mimic what the full-size one looked like. So that's kind of what I know about it. I don't have any real detail as to who attributed what. There's an earlier sketch which I believe Mentor drew, which is that one that looks like the electric chair with a dish behind it kind of thing.
Right, right.
That's the only preliminary drawings I've ever seen of it.
You know, I kind of consider, Don, I consider you one of the foremost experts on the time machine, because Don created a website called the Time Machine Project, which is off of the Coleman Zone website. Is that where it's still located?
Yeah, it's still there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, for anybody that wants any information at all about the 1960 movie or the prop, that's the place to go. All the information you ever need is on that page. But Don, I know you originally saw the machine, the real prop, back in, what, 1970? Can you tell us that story, how that happened?
Right. There was, well, prior to that, I always thought the movie was shot in England. It was the 8x10 gloss, colored glossies all say printed in England on the corner. And there was a book out at the time, it was called Classics of the Foreign Film. And there was a big article about the time machine in it, and the guy said it was shot in England. So I was really surprised when in 1970 the MGM auction was taking place, and I found out the whole thing was shot in Culver City, my backyard.
Wow.
So first thing I did was order the catalog as soon as I found out you could buy one, because that's the only way you were going to get in is you had to have a catalog. So it was a whopping $10, which was a lot of money back in 1970. And so I got the catalog, went over there, and the time machine actually was listed in 2 locations in the catalogs. One said it was in lot 3, another one said it was on lot 1. First thing I did was I went to I think it was at lot 3 I went to first. And I went to where it said it was, and there was nothing in there but a 2-headed turtle, which you saw on the Addams Family at one point, and some other miscellaneous larger props. There was a storage room, which is all really what was on lot 3, with storage and sets and setups and stuff. So I got to lot 1 and finally found the machine. There was the full-size one in there. And when I first saw it, I really didn't even think it was the one from the movie. Because I just thought, you know, you have this envisionment of what you think it's supposed to look like.
Exactly.
You know, with a lot of movie props, it's the same way. You have a vision of what it's supposed to look like, and then when you actually see it, it's like, you're kidding, right?
There's something wrong.
Something else. I literally, we walked out, there was a friend of mine was with me, and I said, I don't think that's the machine. I think it's a phony. I don't know what that was. Later found out it was the machine. It's just, it was dusty, it was dirty, it hadn't been cleaned up. The original console was missing, it had been replaced with one that Tom Sherman had built. And, you know, you got to love it after a while when you realize it really was the real deal. And, you know, what you expected wasn't there. You know, it's Hollywood magic once again, you know.
So you took some reference pictures, photographs of the machine back then in the auction, right?
Yeah, well, that's interesting too, because back in the days you didn't have your instant cameras and stuff like we have now with digital.
Right.
So I borrowed my dad's 35 millimeter Argus camera that he had from World War II and did a quick learn on it, because nothing on that camera was automatic.
Right.
You had to have a photometer a light meter to tell your light setting. You had to set all the camera settings on the thing, shoot your pictures, hope for the best, take the roll of film to your local drugstore, wait a week, get your prints back, and see if you got anything worth looking at. And by then it was too late to go take any more. And I thought I had what I needed, and I was happy with what I got. So.
Can you fill us in what happened? You know, who I don't know if you know who actually purchased the machine at the auction, or what happened to it until the time it shows up with Bob Burns later on.
I was over there when it auctioned off. I didn't know Bob at the time, so I probably didn't even recognize who he was at the time. I know he was there bidding on it. The person who did win, I didn't know who it was. I don't remember if I even saw the person at the time who did it. But he bought it and was going to do it as a traveling tour across the United States with some other props that he bought at the auction. I guess it was done in a trailer. So the machine was in a trailer, and they just drove the trailer around town to town and set it up, and it was a walkthrough event kind of thing. I have found photographs taken of the machine in the trailer.
Huh.
And someone had a photograph of the outside of the trailer that had the name on it, but it was such a bad resolution picture, and I haven't been able to get a better resolution picture off of it. But the guy who bought it originally apparently lived in Anaheim, and although the story is that the machine was found in a thrift store down there,
Right.
from Tom Sherman's girlfriend, she told me that there was an ad in either Variety or Hollywood Reporter, she couldn't remember which, that the guy who owned it was selling off all the props and stuff that he had in the tour. And Tom Sherman went down there with her. They saw the thing, and the condition it was in, and he paid for it, bought it at the time from the guy.
Okay.
There's a picture on my website of Tom after he just bought it. He's got both of his pockets pulled out, showing he doesn't have any money left after buying this thing. That's a cute picture. So that's where it actually came from. And then he put it into a storage unit, and I got photographs from a friend of mine who took a lot of pictures of it at the storage unit before I went to Bob. Then they all got together and fixed it all up for one of his Halloween shows.
Right. Bob he got the machine, he fixed it up he had it restored by some prop makers, right? Some Hollywood.
Yeah, Tom Sherman, Harvey Mayo, D.C. Fontana, a bunch of names that I don't recall offhand, but there was a team of people, about 6 or 4 people all working on it.
Right. And he used to have a Halloween show. Was it in Burbank or was it somewhere else?
Yeah,
yeah.
It was at his home here in Burbank, and they set up for whatever show. This was a time machine show. They had built a kind of a lab setup.
Right.
They had flat set up to look like the lab.
Right.
And then the actor would get in the machine, they turned it on, and the lights would dim out, and the flats would flip around, and the lights came back up, and now it looked like the cave of the Morlocks.
Wow.
And then they had actors dressed as Morlocks come out and attack the guy, big flash of lights and whatever, and you know, I can't remember if he went back to present day or how they did the ending, but it was a pretty impressive show. He did a show like every year for quite a long time.
He's quite the archivist of Hollywood sci-fi props. You know, he's the guy.
He's got quite a collection.
Yeah. Now, I understand George Pal attended one of those Halloween showings of the time machine that he did, and actually got to sit.
He was there. Just the night that I went over and saw the show, George was there. I didn't get to see him because he was in a room with Bob and whoever the higher click people were at the time, all gathered around him. But I did see that he was there.
Wow. So he got to sit in the machine, and somebody took a picture of him in the machine, and
correct. Yeah, that's
the only time. I guess that's the only time he got to sit in the actual machine, right? George.
From what I understand, yeah, he never did it during the production.
All right. Since the film, people have always been building these time machine models of all sizes and scales. How many fans do you know have built full-size replicas of the machine? Do you know?
Full size, I think we're somewhere around 17 or 18 that are already built.
Okay.
And there's about 4 that I know of that people are working on currently.
Right. Wow. That's pretty amazing, because people are always saying, oh, I could never build that, you know, that would be impossible to build. But all it doesn't take a lot of money, I'll tell you that, because I did it on a shoestring. But it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and you know
why they call it a time machine, right?
Right.
Because it takes so much time to build one.
You're right.
That's why it's a time machine.
It took me about 5 years to build mine, and you know, I'm going to go into that later on as to, you know, how I ended up doing it. But we both know Rob Niosi, and how long did he spend on his replica building that?
I think the last count was like 11 years.
Yeah. And
It was
so-
going to be a summer project.
Right, right. So it can get, you can get crazy building these things. You know, you can make it as
Yeah.
good, you know, it's totally, you know, up to you.
Yeah, I'm currently started on one again for myself that I'm going to keep this time.
Right.
And decided to try to match what they actually did. You know, some of the materials are going to be different, but you know, finishes and whatever. I'm just trying to get it to be what like MGM did. You know, if they didn't use brass, I'm not using brass. If they had steel rails, I'm using.
Oh,
You know, so it's going to look very much like what they did, and
Right.
you can say it's just what they did. You know.
Right. So how many full size have you made yourself?
I've done 2 so far.
Okay. And you want to do one more for your own?
Myself. And actually, it was interesting. 2 days ago, somebody approached me, so I'm going to be building another one. I'm going to send me my first payment in August.
Wow. Well, that's make sure you document it. That'll be a future show probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really good. Now, in 2002, they did a remake or a reimagined Time Machine movie, and they, you know, of course, they like to re-up the designs of the props and things. But
Sure.
what did you think of that film and that prop?
I like the machine quite a bit.
Yep.
My major problem with it, of course, is from the original story, like I said earlier, George looked like he built the machine himself in his own workshop.
Right.
Whereas the new machine, I don't think a single person could build that in a lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they could, but I've seen someone build a really nice model of it that's working and everything. But at full size, that's a lot of machining, and I know what went into building some of the parts on that one. So that part of it just kind of was lacking for me.
Right.
And the storyline was okay. I think an additional 5 minutes could have made it in the right places, could have tied the story together a little bit tighter. Because I got the feeling, I'd have to watch it again to be sure I'm right, but that nobody knew he was building a time machine.
Right.
You know,
right.
the story, he shows the model, he's telling everybody what he's doing. Hardigan has blackboards full of equations, but nobody really knows what he's doing about it. And so when he disappears, then at the end of the film where Philby is saying, well, I hope he found what he was looking for, all I can think of is, well, as far as you know, he's lying in an alley somewhere in New York City. You know, there was no indication that I got that anyone knew he was building a time machine, so he disappeared in time. He's just missing.
Yeah.
So, like I said, 5 minutes could have tied up that problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now there's talk of another remake, yet another remake. So
I saw about that.
it should be interesting to see if they go through with it and what becomes of it. Do you think the time machine the time machine prop has been a major influence in the whole steampunk era?
Yeah, they seem to really want to fixate on the machine as steampunk. I've seen some really nice. There's a guy up north, I'm not quite sure where he's located, Sacramento-ish kind of area, I think. He did a 2-seat one.
Wow.
That's a little more steampunky. It's very reminiscent of the pound machine, but it's really neat looking, you know. And you know, the whole steampunk thing is, I think it's a lot of fun. I'd like to get more into it than I've been able to. So it looks like fun.
Yeah, I had my machine for a year at the Shelburne Museum in Vermont, and it was the centerpiece of a steampunk exhibit, and that was a lot of fun. My wife and I went up there one day, and we just sat, in the room where the machine was on the side, not saying anything, and just seeing the reaction of people coming in when they first see the machine, and. It's always amazing to me the effect that machine has on people when they first see it. It's like some of them don't know what it is, and other ones know what it is, and they just have this religious experience when they see the machine. And the same thing, I've had the machine here at the TV station for years, and a lot of people will do a double take walking by the door and looking in and seeing it, and they just don't know what to say about, and I've had, quite a few people, well-known people wanting to come in and sit in it and have their pictures taken. So it's pretty amazing the allure that it has on people. You know, it's an amazing prop. I think it's one of, I keep saying this about all the props we talk about, but it really is an iconic Hollywood prop, if not one of, you know, if not the most iconic. You know, I'm sure many other people will argue with, you know, like the other George Pal films and some of the props from there, like the War Machine, the Martian War Machine, or the, you know, I could go on and on. But that machine, it's there. I think it'll always be there forever.
You know, I think your reaction is really right on, because I've experienced the same thing. It's either people know what it is and get excited because they can see one, or if they don't know what it is, they're excited to find out what it is.
Right.
There's a lot of people, if they look at something, don't know what it is, they just walk away. They're not interested. But when they see this, they don't know what it is, they stop and want to know, what is that? So it captures, you know, still capturing attention and interest, I think.
The big deal is the Time Machine film, the 1960 George Pal Time Machine film. I think will live on forever. I think it'll always be shown on television, you know, sort of like other, you know, classic films are. And I think there'll always be an audience for that, because people are always interested in time travel and that whole aspect of it.
Yeah, it seems to be still very popular. Back in the 60s and the 70s, ABC used to run it every year at Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Like clockwork. I mean, if Thanksgiving's coming, and they're going to run the Time Machine.
Right.
And that's when I would sit in front of it with a camera taking pictures, because I knew it was going to come. You know?
Right, right.
And even now, Turner runs it. Well, their 30 days of Oscar, they run it because it did win Oscars for effects, so that gets included in that. And they usually run at least once or twice more during the year. So there's obviously an interest in there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, it'll go on forever. But here's my question for you, Don. What 3 books do you think the time traveler took with him at the end of the film?
I'm not sure which one he took. I tried to find that out, actually.
Okay.
Because I have some really good set stills that were taken. And you can actually read titles on some of the books.
Wow.
That's on the set stills.
Yeah.
The glitch is there's a still that shows all the books on the shelf when he's like writing his letter. It's set up for that. And then there's a still where the books are on the shelf and the 3 are missing.
Right.
I thought it's going to be simple. I just have to find out which 3 holes there are and look at the other photograph and see what those 3 books looked like.
Okay.
The problem is, it seems like they shot this film with all the books intact. Someone took all the books off the shelf and they didn't put them back on again for the next shot, because the books aren't in the same places anymore.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Well,
you do get to see them, though, at the end of the movie when he's dragging the machine back into the house.
Yep.
The books are on the chair.
Yeah.
In the machine. Not that you can tell what they are, but they are there. He put them in the machine, then he dragged the machine back inside the house.
It's a quick shot. You have to look really quick to see it, but it's there. I noticed.
Alan Young said one of the books would be Playboy. So.
Yeah. Now, I noticed behind you a lot of props that look very familiar. And there's, of course, you have that miniature. Did you build that, the one in front of you?
Yeah, this is one of the 1/8 scale kits from Alchemy Models.
Okay.
So it's really nice, really accurate model of the machine. They have a 1/6 scale one out now, which I haven't built, but I do have one of those too. It would be even bigger than this one.
Yeah. Now behind you, I see clocks. Some of those are actual props from the film, correct?
Right, 2 of them are. The 2 directly behind me with the glass domes on them.
Yes.
Both of those were in the film.
Wow.
The Crystal Palace, which is on. I'm looking at my image backwards. Yeah. The one back here, that one was on his on the mantle of his fireplace.
Okay.
It actually had a larger dome on it. And if you look at it, the clock is sitting on a bigger base and has a larger dome on it.
Right.
They obviously didn't have the original dome, and they put it under that one. Mm-hmm. The other one next to it is the one that's on his desk, You see when he's writing on the calendar, it's in the back corner. So those two were both actually in the film.
Right.
The rest of the ones up there are same model, same manufacturer as the ones in the movie, just not the ones that were actually in the movie.
Are there any more props? Are you still hunting for original Time Machine props, or do you think they're all gone now?
Something, it's hard to find that stuff because the MGM auction, of course, whatever they had, it's all gone to the winds, and that's who knows where that is. These particular two clocks came from a prop rental company that actually rented them to MGM for the show.
Okay.
And there was two others. There was the sundial and one of the other wall clocks, and another collector has those too.
Right.
Other than that, one of Yvette Mimieux's Weena costumes came up for auction last year, and fortunately I didn't see it because I didn't have enough money to buy it anyway, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Right.
But that came up, but stuff with the film is really rare and far apart.
Well, that's very cool that you have those, and I know you treasure them and you're taking care of them, which is really cool. Don, I want to thank you very much for taking time and sitting with us today and talking with us and talking about one of the most iconic props of history, the Time Machine from the 1960 film, The Time Machine. So thank you, Don, and we'll be in touch again someday.
Alrighty, take care.
Okay, take care.
I'm Bob Burns, and hi, Carl. How are you? I understand you build time machines. Yeah. I have a few myself, matter of fact, including the big full-size one, and about 5 or 6 other models, I think, that are kind of cool. One the size of a housefly, literally. Wow. A friend of mine made it for me. You have to use a magnifying glass to look at it. But if you ever get out to California, look me up. You can get a picture sitting in the real thing.
Okay, so this is my take on the Time Machine prop from the 1960 film. So back in 1995, I had a discussion with one of my friends, and we were discussing the Time Machine film. And he said, wouldn't it be cool to have a model of the Time Machine that you could put on your dining room table? And I said, that would be really cool. I said, it would be even cooler to have a full-size Time Machine in your living room. It was a joke. He said, well, you couldn't do that. And I said, I bet you I could if I had enough time and money. So the bet was on. So I decided that I was going to build my own time machine. Now this was going to be on a shoestring budget, very shoestring budget. I didn't have any money. I had plenty of time at the time, but no money. So I got some blueprints by taking, at the time in 1995, there weren't many blueprints available of the 1960 film. So taking screen grabs off of a VHS copy of the movie, I was able to get a rough idea and draw out some crude blueprints of the size and the dimensions of the machine. Years later, I was able to secure blueprints, and I came pretty close to the accurate dimensions of the actual prop that you've seen. So what I started with is the base. Now the base is just made up of glued together layers of plywood. And on the top is some Luan plywood. And then I just put some molding around the edges here, which I routed out of 2x4s, basically. I actually carved out and routed out those feet that are sticking out the bottom of the machine way underneath there. And I attached those. There's actually dollies sitting inside, recessed into those feet so that this can roll, although the machine is extremely heavy. So once the base was complete, I moved on to a difficult part, which was the rails. Now, again, I'm on a budget. So these rails are actually 1.25 inches electrical conduit. I think on the original prop it might have been 1 3/8 inches or something like that. But this is electrical conduit that I had to bend. My son and myself bent these with an industrial grade conduit bender. We basically laid out on paper the shape of these rails, and we bent the conduit to match the shape. We had to do it, as you can see, in some sections and fitted them together. And that's basically how the rails went. The engine housing in the back, I tried to use as much recycled material as possible. I would look for things that were close in dimensions to what I was looking for to try to utilize those in the construction. This engine housing in the back here is basically made of wood, Luan plywood over a frame, a wooden frame. And these parts here, these globes, glass globes that light up, are fashioned from lamp housings, lamp shades, plastic lamp shades. This is one, and this is a lamp shade from a light fixture also. This device here, which is the drive of the dish in the back, is actually a loving cup on the bottom. This is the horn from an old E-flat or alto horn that was thrown away at the dump. These are some pipes. This is a toy plastic ball, toy dishes, toy bowling pins that I cut in half, glued together. The parts that you see that are more detailed, like these insulators here, are actually molded. Don Coleman got these from molds pulled off of Bob Burns' original time machine. So these parts here are molded off of the original time machine parts. Next, we come to the dish. The dish is a story in itself. I searched for over 5 years. I could not afford to have a copper or brass or aluminum dish spun. It would have been thousands of dollars to have a dish spun in this dimension. This is a 5-foot diameter dish. What I ended up doing is I spent years looking for something that approximated the shape. I looked at, snow sleds, I looked at satellite dishes, I looked at, you name it, anything that was round and concave, I looked at. Could not find anything that was this size. A friend of mine, by happenstance, I happened to ask him if he knew of anybody that had satellite dishes. And he said, well, I've got one in my backyard. And I said, what do you mean? He says, yeah, I have a satellite dish. It's a 6-foot dish that a tree came down on and cleaved it, made a huge dent in it. I've got it in my backyard if you want to look at it. I didn't think it would be worth looking at. I went to his house. I looked at it. It was almost the exact dimensions in terms of the concave form, but it was a little too big and it had a huge dent in the side of it. But I decided to take it anyway because I couldn't find anything else. So I took that. I spent quite a bit of time banging out the dent, and I had to cut 1 foot off the radius of this dish. This is it's an aluminum dish here. And I was able to cut 1 foot off of it, and that's how the dish became the time machine dish. All these little things here, there's 365 of these little doodads, which represents a day of the week, day of the year. And these are all wood dowels that are cut and glued on. These designs were hand painted by me by taking a slide projector and projecting slides of the original design from a frame grab off the film, projecting it onto the dish, and I just traced them out with paint pens and painted the designs on. That's how that was done. This lamp cage here, these are all done by me using brass and soldered together. If we move forward here to the control panel, okay, this is actually a piece of lucite tubing. Again, all of these things were pretty much inexpensive materials that I was able to get. This is a piece of clear lucite, and the reason I wanted clear, it will become evident in a minute, but I was able to cut this. This is the right dimension. I found some, again, lamp shades or lamp housings from fixtures to use on the end caps that light up. These here are glass. I had these ordered. These are glass globes, colored glass globes. Now in the front here of the control panel, you'll see where the pilot or the time traveler sits, and you'll see the control panel, and that is made so that the display can change depending on how I move this lever back and forth, which also controls the speed of the dish in the back. It's kind of crude. Again, I was very low budget, but that's why this is a clear lucite control panel, because you can see right through it to the mechanism inside that changes the date when I move this. Again, on the front of this control panel, I had to hand paint that design, pretty much utilizing the same method of projecting a slide onto it and tracing it out. On the side of the rails, we didn't talk about these, but these little florets here, these actually magnetically attach to hide these bolts that hold everything together. And they just stick on magnetically. But this rosette here is actually molded, designed off of the original machine, and molded. Again, Don Coleman was able to get me copies of this pulled from a mold. So these are pretty accurate to the actual machine. Finally, we come to one of the most expensive parts of the machine, and this is probably single-handedly the most expensive part I had to purchase. I had to purchase this crystal for about $40, $50. This is a Swarovski crystal. And this is a solid piece of brass that I had turned at a local machine shop. All in all, this lever probably cost me $90, $80 or $90. And that was the most expensive part of anything that I had to purchase separately for this machine. The chair, again, has a story in itself. The chair in the original time machine prop is based on a 1903 Burning House barber chair. Now, if you're able to luckily find a 1903 Burning House barber chair, you can pay thousands and thousands of dollars for them. They're very expensive chairs because of the ornate carving and the brass work. My original chair that I had in this machine was something I did very quickly and crudely, and it wasn't screen accurate. So years ago, I actually got rid of that chair, sold it in a yard sale, and I built this chair from scratch, which is a closer replica of a Burning House barber chair, which they used in the original machine. Everything you see is pretty much hand carved by me, except for these two end pieces for the armrests. These, again, were taken from molds off of a real Burning House barber chair. And a friend of mine, Rob Niosi, who built his own time machine replica, was able to send me a copy of these, which I was able to take molds off, silicone molds off, and mold resin plastic replicas for these ends. So that chair alone was almost a year-long project building that chair. In total, I probably have spent over the years, one other thing I got to mention is I could not do the upholstery on the chair myself. That was something a little beyond my abilities. So I had an upholsterer do this for me. I think it was in the vicinity of $300 to have this chair upholstered the way I needed it. But all in all, I estimate that the cost of this machine was probably $800 or $900 to build, just utilizing materials that you could find anywhere. For many, collecting sci-fi and TV memorabilia like photos and small collectibles and models will satisfy that urge to relive moments from the past when they enjoyed a great film or TV show. As you have seen, some like to go to extremes with their collections. Let's meet someone who has been there, done that, and is now in the process of taking it to another level. We're going to connect now back to California with our friend and prop maker extraordinaire, Don Coleman, who is working on a special project along with our next guest, Greg Cochran. Okay, we are now connected to Burbank, California, Don Coleman's shop where he does his magic. And we have our special guest sitting with us today. And that is Mr. Greg Cochran. Greg, nice to see you.
Good morning. Northeastern time would be good afternoon.
That's right. It's morning where you are, and it's afternoon where I am, but that's okay. We're going to continue on. So I've got a list of questions here. I'm just going to go down here so that the audience knows what we're talking about. Greg is a collector of TV and movie memorabilia, and Don is in the process of building a full-size replica for Greg. So, Greg, when did you first start collecting TV and film memorabilia?
Well, you know, I came from a broken home where my parents were divorced when I was only 4. My mother took me, I remember this so vividly, she took my sister, who's 14 months older than me, she took us to Kmart one day back in 1966, and she bought me the big little comic book of Batman the Cheetah Caper, the paperback book. And I have it to this day. It's in my display cabinet. So that was basically the start. And then, of course, being in 1966, you know, I had the Batman T-shirt. I had a lot of the Batman toys. And ironically, Carl, I still have a lot of those toys.
Wow. So
that's how it all started. And, of course, after my wife passed away 22 years ago, before she passed away, she goes, honey, because this was, now remember, this was before the internet, before Google, before everything. We used to look through the Toy Shop newspaper. She goes, honey, give Batman a rest. If you like something from Gilligan's Island, or if you like something from Lost in Space, diversify your collection. So that's what I've done. I've diversified my collection. So now, besides having a roommate and 2 cats and 10 goldfish, we live with 36 mannequins. They are clothed. I'm not kinky, but yeah, they're fully clothed with famous Hollywood iconic costumes, everything from Adam West to Linda Carter to Roddy McDowell from Planet of the Apes. So
you have quite the collection. I mean, it covers a lot of different TV shows. What is, I know we use this word a lot here, iconic. What is some of your most iconic pieces that you have?
I would have to narrow it down. It would probably be my I Dream a Genie bottle, which is an actual 1964 Jim Beam bottle painted. I have both seasons. I have the one when the show was in black and white and when the show was in color. Many people don't realize it, but it was the same style bottle. It was just painted different for different seasons, from black and white to color. So, and it took me a long time to like the first season because I didn't like it. But many, many years later, a friend of mine said, Greg, you need to get that first season because that's where it all started. So when I finally saw one in person, I knew I had to have it. So
right now, the I Dream a Genie materials are probably the biggest part of your collection, or no?
No, I have a few things, but I'd say the bulk of my collection basically stems around the 1966 Batman TV show.
Okay. When did you first see the 1960 Time Machine film, George Pale's film?
Well, I was at my uncle's house. And of course, they had color TV too. And those of you I'm originally from Indiana. Of course, now I live in Florida. But I remember watching WGN Channel 9 Fraser Thomas Family Classics out of Chicago, and they had the Time Machine. And when he first opens up the door, when you hear the fanfare, dun dun dun, my jaw, like a cartoon, it just dropped. It wasn't the fascination of traveling through time. There was just something about that machine and what it could do. So
it's that scene in the Time Machine movie has gotten so many of us, and you are now joining an elite club of full-size Time Machine owners. So, but what other Time Machine memorabilia do you have in your collection?
Well, I don't really have as much as Don, but I do have I have the little model with the tantalus box, of course, and it's in a display case. And I have a miniature one that's probably not even half scale, but I'd say it's about a quarter size. And that was a one of a kind. And when I commissioned him, I got that when I turned 50 as well. He'd never made a full size one. He said he was going to make me one, but that didn't pan out. So I just went ahead and just chalked it off that, this is the only one I'm ever going to get. And of course, I have the movie. I just recently got it on Blu-ray. And when I got to know you, I saw your video on YouTube, and I got to know you, and I got to know Don.
Right.
And then I'm finding out that, to my knowledge, what Don's told me and other people's told me, and you've told me, there's only like maybe less than half a dozen people that has come out that has an actual time machine. And I'm not saying this to brag, and I realize that not everybody can afford such a thing, but I just feel very blessed and honored to have you follow my journey, and also because Don is a very, very talented man from what I've seen. In fact, the Robbie there in the background, he told me he built, and I've seen some of the things in his home that he has built many years ago, and I just couldn't have found a better person.
No, you couldn't. Don is quite the prop maker and collector and time machine historian. He knows pretty much all there is to know about the 1960
What's
film.
so special that I appreciate is, he cares.
Right.
I asked for a special feature on my time machine that he's going to add, and he don't have a problem with that, which I think is really a neat idea. In fact, I think I mentioned it to you, but it's just, if I'm not happy with something, I'm sure, hypothetically, if I wanted the crushed burgundy velvet to be purple with polka dots, if that's what I want, I'm sure he would do that. But I just feel very blessed that he pays every attention to every meticulous detail, as I'm sure you did when you built yours. So, like I said, I just feel very honored and blessed to have him in my corner, because he will be in a long list of people that I've done business with, and the people that have made my props, whether it be the Heart of the Ocean or the Ruby Slippers or the costumes, where they care because they're passionate about that. That's their passion.
Right. I know Don's in the background somewhere there, but how is the build going on your machine? Have you checked it out yet? What's the progress report?
You can't see it because I'm sitting directly in front, but I've seen the chair, and I've seen some bits and pieces. There's just, as Don said, there's pieces everywhere. Of course, I don't know what they are. I know what I recognize a few, but I don't know what they do. I think after we get done here, I'm going to hopefully see the big dish. But other than that, I saw the crystal the other day at his home. Just the crystal. It wasn't the control lever. It was just the crystal in itself. So,
well, I know, it sounds like Don's making some progress. Getting all the pieces together and getting them ready is the major part of the build. Knowing how I had to go through the same process. The actual assembling of it all together, it takes a while too, but not as much as just collecting everything and getting all the pieces together that you need. So I'm glad to see that it's coming along, pretty smoothly. Do you think within a year or so you'll have it finished, or?
Well, the way we worked it out with our time frame, I told Don, I said, Don, there's no rush. I said, you have at that time it was about 2 years, but now it's about a year and a half. So actually, Carl, I'm not in any hurry.
Good.
Because I'm going to be retiring December 31st, 2021, and early spring of 2022, I'll be flying back out here to present him with the last payment, and then hopefully he can, when I retire, I'm going to definitely be buying a house, so I will be able to display my items much more properly, because there's nothing more frustrating to have something that you spend a lot of money for and it's in the closet.
Yeah, that'd be nice. If you get a new house, and have a room specifically dedicated, to
definitely.
that would
It's
be
definitely
great.
going to be displayed. I've got it already. Asked my roommate. He'll tell you I've got notes everywhere. I've got drawings of how I'm going to display the time machine. So I'm just.
But the results are worth it, when you finally get it and it's a part of a display in your home or wherever it is. It really it starts a lot of conversations. So it's a great piece to have. I wish you luck, and I hope Don sends me some progress report photos of how he's making out. And it's been very nice talking to you. You can't have Robbie, Greg. Robbie belongs to Don. I know he's in the back. You can't have him. Okay.
His doesn't talk right now, but mine will be talking. So.
Well, thank you very much, Greg, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
So that's basically the story of my replica. Yes, you can do your own. It's not difficult. It just takes time. And again, but if you have a time machine, you have all the time in the world to do these things. Thank you for watching LTV's Top Props. See you next time.